Welcome, everyone. I honestly could not be more excited to introduce this workshop, the panel we're going to hear from. I think all of us are just absolutely lucky and we'll have so much to share after we hear from the magnificent speakers we have. So welcome to the Decolonizing Child and Youth Philanthropy and Addressing Adultism workshop. It's really a pleasure to be with you all, to be with funders, to be with community partners, to be with young people who can come together united by a shared goal of fostering equity and inclusivity in philanthropy. As you've heard, this year's AGM is Better Together, bridging funders, young people, and community for collective impact. And that resonates deeply with our ECFG community's work on decolonizing child and youth philanthropy and addressing adultism. These efforts, which we're going to hear more about today from our amazing panel, are really reflective of our commitment to this year's AGM themes: working collectively to center the whole child across silos, connecting to communities most affected, and shifting philanthropy with and for young people. As a network, we have spent the last few years increasingly examining the root causes that hold problems for children and their communities in place. We've engaged with the Decolonizing Child and Youth Philanthropy learning journey and developed a comprehensive framework with Degan Ali and her incredibly talented team at Adeso, aiming to dismantle colonial legacies in philanthropic practices. And our research collaboration with Mtoto News on adultism has really been pivotal in highlighting how ageist cultural systems disempower young people. These initiatives we've undertook have provided some valuable insights and practical frameworks that guide our collective efforts to create this more inclusive and equitable philanthropic landscape for children, youth, and their families. But this work is operated in silos. However, if you look at the results of both of the research projects, the decolonizing and adultism research projects, it's been made clear that these efforts are deeply interconnected, with power dynamics and cultural notions of childhood being central to both. We have learned how decolonizing child and youth philanthropy involves dismantling the remnants of colonial practices that continue to influence how we support and engage with communities. This approach asks us to challenge and change the power structures that perpetuate inequality, consider mechanisms of reparations, and create systems that are more responsive to the needs and voices of local communities. Similarly, in the adultism research, we've begun to uncover how adultism is an ageist cultural system. It promotes the stereotyping and disempowering of young people in philanthropy. Adultist worldviews often position adults as inherently superior to children, believing them to be more capable in understanding and acting upon their own social reality. This mindset not only diminishes the contributions of incredible young people, as we've heard earlier today, but it also perpetuates this cycle of exclusion and disempowerment. And our timing couldn't be more urgent, as Heather said earlier today. We're witnessing youth movements across the globe, especially young people across the global south. Whether it's students facing violence and their demands to the end of a genocide against Palestinians, youth advocating for climate action in a world we failed to nurture, or young leaders standing up against systemic racism that plagues their communities. Young people are at the heart of social change. They always have been. However, excluding them from important conversations and decision-making processes. So this intersectional, this colonialistic and adultistic, this intersectional marginalization undermines not only their potential, but our impact as philanthropic actors. So today, that's why we believe it's quite crucial to be looking at that intersection of colonialism and adultism. And today, we're quite fortunate to have two incredible experts on our panel who have dedicated their lives to addressing these critical issues. I'm thrilled to introduce our panel moderator first, Brian King from Mtoto News, who you all met earlier today. Come up and join us. Brian brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in shifting power. And under his guidance, this discussion will be nothing short of enlightening. So thank you all for being here, and let's look forward to an engaging and productive session. Over to you, Brian.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Sheila. Some claps for Sheila. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Madam Jennifer Kaberi. Ms. Kaberi is an Afrocentric children's rights advocate. She frontiers child-centric technology initiatives. She is a research affiliate at Harvard's Berkman Center. She focuses on creating safe digital spaces for children, and with a master's in child development, over 17 years of experience, she shapes policies and pioneers platforms like Mtoto News International, which she founded 7 years ago, and currently runs as the CEO. Mtoto News is a leading platform in promoting children's rights in the digital age. She is passionate about empowering Africa's youth and children, and she believes in their pivotal role in the continent's development. All right, some claps for Madam Jennifer Kaberi. All right, for the next person in the panel, I've read about her, I've researched about her, and I got to meet her today for the first time physically. I have to say she's an amazing person, a very achieved person. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Madam Degan Ali. Madam Degan Ali is an internationally renowned humanitarian leader who has been at the forefront of shifting power for decades. She is a Rockefeller Foundation Global Fellow for Social Innovation, a contributor to the Overseas Development Institute Humanitarian Policy Group and the Global Food Security Journal. Degan is also the co-founder of the first Global South civil society network for local and national humanitarian organizations, the Network for Empowered Aid Response, also called NEA. She is an innovator, translating groundbreaking ideas into action, such as pioneering the first large-scale cash transfer. I'm pretty sure we'll be very interested in hearing more about that. Put your hands together again for Madam Degan. Okay. So yes, guys, my name is Brian King. I am a young person, member of the Youth for Impact Fellows. And before I start, I introduce them as professionals. I love to say, there is the professional work you do, and then there is you as a person. Who are you? You know, you are a human being. Who are you? What are your passions and interests? So to start us off, again, I will ask Madam Jennifer to start by introducing herself, telling us in 1 minute. I'm going to be very strict about time. In 1 minute, who are you?
My name is Jennifer. I am a mom of many children. Okay, and I'm glad to be working in a space to empower children to take up their space. Okay. Because I believe for us to develop Africa specifically, we have to start with our children. Okay, there's a saying in Africa that if you want to is it samaki aliyo mkunje mapema? Yeah, like if you want to shape something, shape it when it's still wet or when it's still young. Okay. Because some of us, we try to target 21, 23, 24, 25-year-olds. We lost it when that child was 5 years old. So for us at Mtoto News, our work is to be able to empower them at very young age to be able to take up their space. And what we always say in the office, we have working case studies, and Brian is one of our case studies. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that. Again, I will invite you guys to appreciate our panelists every single time they share. All right, so appreciate them, please. All right. Thank you. I will ask you guys to have a bit more energy. You just eat it. All right. Miss Degan, who are you?
So I'm a mother of three. And I run Adeso, which is a non-profit based in Nairobi. And our work is, I would say, has transitioned from being a traditional NGO that used to get a lot of USAID, EU funding, doing both development around environment, education, and humanitarian cash transfers, as you mentioned in the introduction. But we are now transitioning to being more of a social enterprise and really trying to become, for us as an organization, when we talk about decolonization, we believe that to be truly decolonized, it means we need to be financially liberated. And that means we need to generate our own resources. And to do that, we're starting up a bunch of businesses, different types of enterprises, some purely commercial and some that has a social impact. And I'll talk about one of them later, which is Kuja. But so we have a global advocacy team, but we also on decolonization and locally led development, but we also continue to do work around environment and reimagining humanitarian response in Somalia.
All right, thank you so much. All right, see, we're learning, yeah? All right, so to start this conversation, to start this panel off, we are going to be talking about a research that Mtoto News did, investigating adultist view in key philanthropy institutions, yeah? And so, Ms. Jennifer, the first question I have for you is for you to tell us about the research that you undertook for ECFG and the adultism framework that you developed. What should funders know about adultism and childism in philanthropy? And I know for the tech people, slide number 3.
Thank you so much. So we partnered with ECFG to just find out if philanthropy organizations are actually adultistic. So adultistic is a big word, and ECFG have been very generous. They have given you some pamphlets with showing. So adultistic is this view that because you're taller, you have lived on earth longer, you have few gray hairs, you're more human than a person who has lived less, they're shorter than you. Okay? And because of that, we discriminate children because you think because we have been here longer than you, you are not humans yet. You are human becoming, while us, we are human being. Okay, because of that, you discriminate. You think you don't have the same faculties that we have. You don't have all this. So you discriminate children because of that. And that makes what these young people are saying. You don't give them resources because no, I've been here longer than you. Okay, so, and you expect, I laughed when Susan asked this question. Is adulting traumatizing? But you expect children to act as adults. Did you hear the number of people saying yes? But most of us, when we are doing our strategies for our grants, we don't think about younger people. We expect them to act as adults. Okay? So because we know, you do not know. Okay? So the fact sheet has more details. So this research was very interesting. To be honest, when we got into it, I was hoping I would not get anything. It will be, we'll not find adultism. But unfortunately, as one of the funders told us, philanthropic organization are adultistic in nature. Okay? And this is because of the foundation, how they were built and how they were founded, the people who founded them. They did not found them with children in mind. Apart from the ones which are coming up, a few, like for example, CRIF, they are very intentional. They were founded with children in mind. Okay? So they were not founded with children in mind because they're adultistic. Okay? And the other finding we found, the bigger the organization, the more adultistic it is. There will be two very passionate people, but that's it. Okay? But as you go up, the older the people, the more adultistic it is. They don't think about children. You don't think about how children. Then what is the opposite of adultism? It's childism. Childism is what? Childism is looking internally. How will my action affect children? Putting yourself in the shoes of children. Going back to your 5-year-old self. What you were discussing. Thank you, Susan, for doing this question for me. Okay? Going back to the bladder for the Kenyans in my group. Okay? The dodgeball. Okay? Playing in the mud, sliding down going back there and thinking, okay, I'm developing this strategy for these children. And then, okay, if I was 5 years old, would I really want this intervention? But Degan is going to be talking about context-specific philanthropy. Is the reality of my childhood the same for me who lives in California, the same as someone who lives in Lilongwe or Mangochi in Malawi? Is it going to be the same? am I funding the same child, a 5-year-old born on 5th of June 2019, because they are 5? Are they reality the same? So childism is going to the reality of the child and thinking, how will it affect the child? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. And I know for many of us here, well, not us, for many of you guys here, can you guys hear me? 1, 2, and 2? All right, good. For many of the people here, childism is a new concept, a new word even maybe, yeah? So but I know that almost all of them, if not all of them, have heard about child participation in philanthropy. Are these the same things? Is this the same thing?
No, childism is not child participation. Childism is internal facing. It's sitting by yourself and thinking about children and putting yourself in the shoes of children. Child participation is going and asking children. Okay? But the best thing, if you are childist, you're more likely to engage children. You're more likely to have an engagement. You have child participation. Okay? So the path to be childist, one of the paths is to child participation. Okay? I know it's a very difficult thing. You're thinking, how children? Oh no, they have seen, not heard. Okay? No, what can a child tell me? I know. I remember in the research, one funder told us, I believe in the concept of involving children, but I don't think it's necessary. It hurt me, and then we paused and we had to do a training for about 30 minutes and went back to the research on why it is important to involve children. But it's when you listen to children, you become more childist. You start now, before you go to the child, what you are going to do the child is clarify, are my thoughts the same? What I was thinking, is it the same? Am I putting in that child's shoes? And then you go ask, are these shoes the real ones, or are they too tight, or do you want them in a different color? Okay, just to clarify, this is what they really want, instead of making decisions for them. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
So much for that, Jennifer. Please appreciate it. And I know for a fact that the word childism and even being childistic comes from, just taking back the power from, if someone comes and tells you you're behaving like a child, that's usually an insult. I know being childistic is just in the process of taking back the power in that. I want us to now go over to Degan. Yeah, Degan, we've been talking about decolonizing philanthropy. I mean, that is the main reason our fellowship was formed. We want to look at exactly how can we decolonize philanthropy and involve young people in the process. And I remember in one of our meetings with my fellows here, one of them talked about, and I remember asking the question, how do you define decolonizing philanthropy? There is power in definition. So how do you define decolonizing philanthropy?
I think we need to take a step back. And that process means that we have to look at the situation of why global north donors, whether they're government donors, we call them bilaterals, multilaterals like the UN and World Bank, and philanthropy, are in our countries supporting basic services like health, education, water, sanitation, and so on. Why is it that we even need these donors who come from the Western countries to provide these basic services? And I think once you start tackling that and doing a deep dive into that issue, you realize that post-World War II, the system was not created to be a level playing field. The Bretton Woods institutions that were created to ensure that we didn't have fair trade policies, these are the WTOs, the World Bank, the IMF, the UN, all these institutions were created to continue a new form of colonialism for the West. So you have situations where countries, Kenya included, are constantly raising taxes as part of IMF conditions, and those taxes harm who the most? The poor. You have countries like Kenya also paying back loans that the British took out at the time of colonialism, that they're still paying back today. I don't know how much you know about this, but the debt burden that majority of African countries, the interest that they're using to service the debts is actually double or sometimes triple what the West pays in interest for similar loans. So when you're paying such huge amounts of money to service debts, that means you don't have the resources to pay for health, education, and all of these basic services to your citizens. So what happens is the social contract between the citizens and the governments is broken. And that's by design. It's not by happenstance. And that's what we need to understand. So when we talk about decolonization, is to recognize the political and economic architecture that ensures that we are in this position of being professional beggars, constantly asking white folks for money to provide services to our people. Yeah. So for me, decolonization is exactly about that. And so once you understand that, then you start saying, okay, so what it would mean to have a decolonized philanthropy or decolonized aid system. That system looks like where actually we first recognize that aid is a tool of power for the Westerners. And what we need to be doing is saying we need to have a level playing field, and our governments need to be providing the basic services to their citizens. That is their responsibility. They're the duty bearer. So how do these countries get out of poverty so that they can now get to the position of not needing aid? It shouldn't be better types of aid. It should be no aid. Or it should be mutual aid. Can you imagine a situation where Kenya is providing aid to the UK, the former colonizer? That's the kind of situation where we should be thinking about. Next time they have flooding in the UK, we should be able to have NGOs like Mtoto News or Adeso or other organizations providing services to those former colonizers in their homes. Yeah? But that's not what happens. And so we keep talking about tweaking at the edges and slightly reforming the system and not realize what we're reforming is truly at its roots, deeply broken and actually quite evil at its roots. So decolonizing philanthropy for me has that political kind of understanding. And it means that now why is philanthropy important? Philanthropy is important because it is the only flexible resources you have out there. Bilaterals are not going to change overnight. We've been talking to USAID and the FCDOs and the British and all of these others to change their behavior. It's almost impossible to change the bilaterals and the multilaterals. But philanthropy is as easy as changing one individual who's the individual philanthropist. We've seen the impact of Mackenzie Scott and her giving, and how that completely transformed. Now, I bet you the next Mackenzie Scott everybody will be talking about is Melinda Gates. She's going to follow in the same suit and give large unrestricted grants to many Global South actors. She's already started doing that. Of course, it's ironic that they're all women, right? Their husbands don't do the same. So it's really flexible money. It's money that is much easier to influence and to change the behavior of. And it's the kind of money that can take risks and can pilot and can show and chart a new path to giving differently. And then hopefully, by extension, by doing that, by being a good role model, then maybe influence the USAIDs and influence the FCDOs and others. So this is why for us, philanthropy is such a critical part of changing this infrastructure. And what does that mean? That means funding political movements, funding youth activists. Don't fund the Greta Thunbergs in Scandinavia. Fund the equivalents of Greta in Africa, in Asia. Why don't we have, but that tells you the racism of the system. How many Greta Thunbergs have been existing for 30 years in the Global South? And nobody put them up on a pedestal, put them in front of media, put them all of this, giving them, just throwing money at them the way that Greta has been thrown at. What she's done is amazing. I'm not going to fault her for that. But my question is, what is wrong with the system that they don't recognize those black and brown Gretas? You know? So this is what we need philanthropy to be doing, is giving large, unrestricted funds to actors that are actively political, intentionally political, trying to change the system. And that's what decolonizing philanthropy looks like.
Amen to that. And really looking at time here, Degan, I know that you guys did like some amazing research, and in that research, you guys developed a framework, and that framework is about decolonizing child and youth philanthropy. I had a chance to look at it, and I hope all of you guys have too. I want you to just, in a minute, tell us exactly. It was an interesting, it was a very beautiful framework to look at. And you know, a question that popped up in my mind was, why? Why does it look like this? Maybe you can tell us in 1 minute why and how is it set up like that?
Yeah, I'm not good with time, but I'll try. So the framework looks like this. I don't know if it's up on the screen. I guess not. It's in your book. It's page 15. If you want to open it up, it's in the book. And the reason we did this, we were actually, we had a really great opportunity to work with ECFG. They approached us and asked us to work with them on something like this. And we were trying to answer the question of what is the difference between shifting the power, locally led or localization, and decolonization. And what does that actually look like in real life experience, working as a funder in a foundation or as an individual philanthropist? And this framework can actually be used by any institution.
True.
It's specifically focused on youth and children, but it can be used by anybody. And so what we try to do is answer that question, number one. And number two, what we recognized in the process of answering that question is that every institution is at a different stage in their journey. There is no one size fits all. Everybody's different. Some institutions, you will see that the program officers are extremely progressive and ready to take risks, but their legal counsel and their contracts team are not. So within the same institution, you could have just a very, like a dichotomy that's happening in the same institution. So we said, what we need to do is to display this, is to recognize this is a spectrum, and it's a fluid structure, and the same institution can be in different places. Similar institutions can be at the different places or same places. So it's a continuum, it's a spectrum, and it's really a guidance for conversation and internal reflections at institutions, not just among staff, but even with your own partners. So it's how do you go from being colonial to being incremental, to being power shifting, and lastly to being decolonized. Those are the four stages in the framework.
All right, I really hope that you guys get some time to actually look at that specific framework. It's very comprehensive, and I personally love it. And speaking of steps, I know that both of you guys have worked extensively on issues on decolonization and adultism. And so I want you guys to tell us, speaking to us as human beings, how can we, well, not we, how can funders decolonize and de-adulterize? How can funders decolonize and de-adulterize philanthropy in itself? Yeah, we can start with you, Jennifer. Oh, and I'm going to give you 4 minutes. I'm going to give you 4 minutes.
Thank you so much for the 4 minutes. So I don't think we have a silver bullet for de-adulterizing, okay? But the first step is being aware that, yeah, we have an issue, okay? You have to, first, because you will see in the slide, adultism is in 3 stages. It starts as an individual, okay? And for us to be able to reform organization, you have to deal with self. Okay, you have to say, hey, I have issues. I was brought up thinking children are to be seen and not to be heard. That was what I was brought up in my household, and I have brought this into my workspace. It's something that you are brought up with. It's values you are brought up with. So it's something that you need to recognize. When you're aware, that is the first step. Okay, and then there's a whole, we have a proposed way of adultising. It's on your tables, and then you have to have a reflection. Look at your policies in the organization. Most, like the organization that we talked with, most of them, I think they only have a safeguarding policy. And there's some who each and didn't have a safeguarding policy, a child safeguarding policy. And as one told us that we expect our grantees to have. We do not have, but we expect our grantees to have. Where are those grantees? In the global south. Okay, but the philanthropy organization itself, they don't have a safeguarding policy. So as a philanthropy organization, you have to check what policies are in place, what structures are in place, what is our attitude towards children and childhood. Okay, do we, as Degan Ali say, throw money, or do we give it intentionally? Do we think of the impact and how it's going to affect? So it has to be internal facing. Okay. And then as you've done internal facing, be like ECFG. When Zoe told me they're setting up this thing, I was like super excited, because you cannot say you are running a young people's philanthropy group without young people. Have a group. It doesn't have to be big. Work maybe with your grantees. Identify 1 or 2 young people. Let them come and do evaluation to your systems. Okay? And then sit down with young people, with your funders, with your partners, with your trustees, and say, how can we be more intentional to think about children? Okay? So, and then after that, you just evaluate, and then the shifting. So, because there's a very close interlink between adultism, shifting of powers, decolonization, okay, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. They work really close to each other. Okay, look, how are we discriminating? Are we equal? Are we giving equal opportunities to young people? Are we inclusive to young people? Okay, are we shifting powers? Are we actually shifting powers? Not on paper, oh, we are going to have a young person leading this program. Is it a young person of 34 years old? Are we together? Isn't it? It's young person, yeah. The definition of the UN is 35. So 34 is okay. Why don't you trust a 19-year-old, a 25-year-old to run that program? Are we ready to shift that power? You have to look through yourself as an organization. It's a long shot, and as one person, I will try. If you are that person in your organization that you will try, it's gonna happen. Okay, and then institutionalize. Okay, that one person, because of your amazing job improving your organization to be more childist, you get a bigger job. But you had not institutionalized these policies, someone else will come and say, what? We don't know. We don't have anything. Okay, just make sure that there's some policies, you have institutionalized that anybody who comes after you, they're going to follow suit. Okay? And then evaluate and see, is there any other place that we need to improve? Okay, this is a proposed one, but there are more details inside. So I've given a sheet on your desk. Thank you so much. My minutes are over.
And you have done a really good job in keeping time. So yes, I want you, Degan, to talk about, and I know you talked about this, especially when you mentioned about, us being professional beggars in itself. So I want you to talk to me, and you had the definition of what Jennifer means by adultism. What do you think is the intersection between adultism and colonization in the philanthropic processes?
Oh my God, there's so much. But before I answer that, I meant to tell you that there's an opportunity to engage with a framework that's happening tomorrow at lunch. ECFG and Kuja, which I can talk about later, are doing a community of practice. So tomorrow will be the first meeting at lunchtime, and then Thursday morning session, you guys will be able to also engage with the framework if you're interested to participate. So overlap between adultism. As leading a local NGO, being a Black woman, an African woman, I think just the same way that we don't trust young people, it's the same reaction where you don't trust Global South leaders. There's this constant narrative that you are risky to fund and that you're going to be fraudulent, mismanage money, blah, blah, blah. That same narrative applies to youth. Interestingly, not so much with white youth. I wonder why. So I think then there's this idea that you can't make decisions for yourself, that you don't have the ability to have the capacity, you don't have the capacity to lead, you don't have the capacity to deliver on quality programs, you don't have, and that you need help all the time. I mean, there's just so many things I've experienced over the years. I cannot tell you how many times I have been questioned. My integrity has been questioned. I've been accused of being a thief. I can't tell you how many times my ability to deliver has been questioned, and I'm a 35, 40, 45-year-old woman. So you don't have to be young to have that level of questioning. One thing we do have in common is as Black people from the South or Asian people from the South, at least my experience as an African is that the level of treatment of Global South leaders, whether you're young, whether you're 60 years old, it's the same. It's the same level of paternalism and distrust that exists across the board. So sadly, I would say that you know, the colonial paternalistic way that young people are treated is the same that old people are treated, as long as you have that skin color.
That is very unfortunate when you come to think about it, yeah? And I feel like, Jennifer, building on what Degan is just talking about right now, I want just to can you tell us, how can you talk to the funders in the room? What steps can funders take to ensure that both children and communities are respected, building on what Degan said, as capable partners in development?
First, trust the youth. I think there's a fund called Trust the Youth, but really, trust the youth. Regardless of their skin color and their geographical location. You will be shocked at the amount of work and impact young people do. As I think they said earlier, they have more energy, they're more agile. Okay, trust them. Okay? Make the granting process less complex. When you ask me for a 501c, surely I don't know what a 501c is. Let's start by there. Actually, how many people, apart from those ones in the US, how many people know what a 501c is? Under 3. Yeah. So how many? Okay, so when your requirements want me to have, there's a form they send you with that big W. I can't remember what the form is. And you expect me to sign that form so that I can be able to access funding. How do you expect a 19-year-old to register an organization in the US? A 501c3, there are many of them. Okay, but it has to be registered in the US. And you say, oh yeah, we're shifting power, we are southern facing. You have to be very, and then your funding and the strategies have been contextualized. Okay, I was speaking to the Canada lady there. They have an amazing call right now. Contextualize it to my issues. Don't come because it's an issue in America. It's not an issue in Africa. It is not. Contextualize it to the issues that are here. So I will write a very nice proposal. I'll be lying to you because I want the money. And then you will accuse me of misusing your money. I'm not misusing your money. I'm just using it for the needs that I think, I believe their needs. Okay? And I'm actually talking what the kids told us because we spoke to children. See young people as partners. Ensure that they are partners, that we can sit together and discuss and agree this is the strategy that you want to work together with. As partners, okay? And then share limelight with the kids. Thank you, Zoe, for opening the the conference with children, young people, how many of us carry young people we work with to the meetings that you go to? Oh no, I'm going to represent my organization. How many? How many actually say, we are going for this big conference, 5 of us, but it will be the CEO, the deputy CEO, the head of strategy, what about the young people, the 3,000 of them that you claim to be working with? Okay? And then, again, and I know it's hard. Work with groups that already are working on it. ECFG are doing such an amazing job already. CRIF, Grand Challenge Canada, Wellspring. Sorry, because I've worked with those guys. Okay, work with organizations that are already doing something about it, and they're not perfect, but they are moving towards perfection. Then you will be able to improve. Is my time? Do I still have time?
No, time is up, but you can summarize.
And then have an accountability system, because most of the time we involve young people and we don't go back to them to tell them. Okay? I will print it. I didn't print the landing model and show you how it works. Please be accountable to young people. Okay? As we are here, please, I'm hoping after this report, we are going to go back to these young people and say, okay, after that meeting in Nairobi, this is what happened. Okay? Be accountable to young people. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, let's appreciate Jennifer. And I feel like this should be a moment of reflection for all of us as funders, as civil society organizations, as non-governmental organizations. How do we support young people even in the funding processes? Remember the story of David? I mean, he made it. He was supported by fellow young people up to the final stages of the application. But then after that, then what? We had a conversation on power shifts, the power dynamics that exist between funders and young people. I will not go back to the organization that is giving me grants and be like, you know what, I need you to give me bank statements because my government is asking for it. Do you know why? Even though it's something I really do need, I'm afraid you might receive the grant. Okay, we should analyze the different power dynamics that are there, humanize the situation. Okay, I feel like it's a moment of reflection for all of us. And I would ask Degan to answer the same question, but I know Degan at this point you wanted to include an activity for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get to the activity in a minute, but before, let me just talk about some practical things. So trust is important and it's integral, but I think at the same time we also have to recognize that we need some infrastructure to support this new kind of way of giving. And one of the things that we've tried as Adeso is to try to find some practical solutions to these conversations or these issues around how do I find local organizations or partners or activists in the South, whether they're young or not. How do I answer this question about risk and all of these other things. So we have tried to find solutions to these questions and these problems. And one of the things that we're working on right now is a social enterprise called Kuja. For those of you who speak Swahili, you know what that means. It means come. And we have 4 products in that company. One will be Kuja Link, and it's like a LinkedIn for local organizations to upload their profiles. So if you're sitting in London or in the Bay Area and you're trying to find youth organizations to support working on voting rights or working on women's health in Uganda, you can do a search and find them. So that's trying to respond to this issue of, I don't have an office in Uganda, how am I gonna find local partners to work with, okay? So then there's Kuja Build that is trying to answer this question of, okay, financial accountability, procurement, how do I know that they have systems? Because these institutions are led by young people or not led by young people. And to do that, we're providing organizations the opportunity to outsource the things that make it very complicated for them to do business. And that is finance and accounting, HR, procurement. But also we're gonna do fundraising, IT, M&E, and grants management. And so the idea is if you're only funded by philanthropy or if you aspire to even get USAID funding, you're not going to be able to manage the rules and regulations of the U.S. government without failing drastically. So how do we help you to de-risk you so that you can now be ready to take that funding? So that's Kuja Build. And then there's Kuja Learn, which is an e-learning platform. The first course we'll offer is on decolonizing aid. And some of the things I spoke about earlier is in that course. And then there's Kuja Advice. And Kuja Advice is the one working with ECFG on this framework and the community of practice. And that has worked with foundations and INGOs, but also will work with local organizations in the South, anywhere in the world. Now, so that's answering one small component of this issue of community infrastructure. The other question that I think that needs to be answered for donors is because they have, especially if you're a big donor, like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or bilaterals or other donors, you want to give out large grants and you don't have the capacity to manage a lot of small $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 grants. So you do need some level of intermediation. But how does that intermediation happen? What we're saying is we don't want the intermediaries of the UN and the INGOs. We want intermediation that happens in our countries, in our continent. So we, as Adeso, are putting together a fund called the Proximate Fund for the Continent. And what we're trying to do is develop the infrastructure for community foundations across Africa. So we know in Kenya we have KCDF, but we don't have many KCDFs in the rest of the continent, including especially countries in Francophone Africa like Chad, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, and all of those countries that have been really drastically ignored by philanthropy and development. But also countries like, fragile countries like South Sudan, or now Sudan, or Congo, or Somalia, those countries that are considered too difficult to work in for philanthropy. There's no real infrastructure. So we want to help build that infrastructure so that you have intermediaries at the country level, so that I, as a Kenyan, no longer make decisions about who to fund in Ghana. What the hell do I know about Ghana? I'm not Ghanaian. But this idea that Africa is a country and not a continent is just, again, very colonial, you know? So two countries that are bordering right now, Kenya and Somalia. I'm a Somali. Drastically different. Very different in terms of the infrastructure on the ground, the issue areas, the civil society. The civil society in Kenya are much more advanced, much weaker in Somalia. But the idea that we're the same and somebody in another country can make decisions for those two countries doesn't make any sense to me. So we need to really figure out how to develop that infrastructure at the national level, and that's what this fund is trying to do. So my call to action for philanthropy is to be really brave and risk takers in developing that infrastructure for that new ecosystem that we want to see. Stop talking about it and the rhetoric and put your money into developing that infrastructure so that in 10 years, 15 years, there's absolutely no excuse for why we can't fund these young activists. So,
that pose was meant for you guys to appreciate it.
Sheila's telling me in a nice way to get on with the exercise. So, so let me, should I go ahead and
Yes,
explain
please.
the
Yes,
exercise?
please. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So you have 3 or 4 cards at your table. You actually have these workbooks, and inside the workbooks, there's a card like this. If you can find your card at the table. So as a group, each table, the what? Yeah, the sheets, yeah. So as a table, please read this card together, work together as a team, and come to a conclusion on where you think that card fits in this framework, right? And then simultaneously, you can also look at the adultism exposed document, also in that same workbook, and see if there's any kind of overlap between the card and adultism. And then, if you do have any extra time, which you might not, but if you do, there's some questions on page 98 in the workbook. And those questions you guys can reflect on as a team if you have time, but I don't know if you will have time, probably not. So that's the exercise we're going to be doing for the next.
15 minutes. I'm going to hold you very accountable. 15 minutes.
Okay, so we start now?
Yes, please start.
Okay, thank you.
You have 15 minutes starting now, guys. All right, thank you so much for that. I want to, and remember, guys, that Degan had invited all of us to come and interact with the framework in itself. I told you, it's beautiful, it's elaborate, it's everything we want it to be. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Emily Sullivan with We Are Purposeful and Children's Rights Innovation Fund. I wanted to share that with that quote, I think we forget young people can also be funders. If you use a highly participatory approach, a radically participatory approach, as some organizations like ours does, that could be a funder quote because they're the one making the decision. So, Brian, over to you. Ari, sorry, not Brian.
Thank you very much. My name is Eriolu Adenka, and I work with Youth by Youth, a youth-led organization. The quote here says, during a site visit with a local partner, a technical specialist asked them to demonstrate their expertise in raising awareness of child protection in the community and asked questions throughout the visit to better understand their approach. And we categorized this under colonial because personally as a young person, I've had on different projects, I've had technical consultants follow us to the sites of this visit, and they ask very amazing questions. And it's sometimes I find it very interesting because I've been living and I've been working in this community for maybe like 5 years, 6 years, and you just come and you ask questions not to better understand what I'm saying, but to actually make me feel inadequate, right? And it's also because sometimes because I'm young, they feel like, oh, maybe I don't have so much experience. But I've been working in this community for 5 years and you just got here 2 days ago. So I have better experience than you in this community. So sometimes I think it's a colonial mindset that many of them have. So we grouped it under colonial mindset.
Okay, you added that question when I had already had a mic, but I'll try. Hi, my name is Ruth Kimani. I work with the Freedom Fund. There's this question that we had differing opinions or responses, so it will be interesting, even with the question that we were added, to dig deeper into it. So I'll read the question. A philanthropic organization has restructured its teams, and all program officers live in and are from the countries where the organization gives funding. So for us, we had those two, whether it's really actually the colonialism or adultism, because, also speaking from where I sit, with the Freedom Fund having its origins in the US and UK, and with the restructuring that happened, it meant that we have decentralized in terms of how we work, and that's the role that I am taking in East Africa. So, and for me, how I see it as a beauty is actually being a person who is proximate to the issues, and so more or less in terms of moving money closer to the issues because I understand the context. But then somebody else would argue that it's still with the colonial, in terms of the structures are still the same, something hasn't changed. But I also see it as a space where, I show up to be able to challenge. And that is something that I usually do, to challenge the systems so that they best suit or they best address the issues that are in East Africa. So, but anyway, we could have this conversation and really just, check out on some of those things. Yes, so thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Let's appreciate ourselves, everyone. Now, my panelists are looking at me with those, eyes. So the thing is, we are about to sum it up. We need to break up this amazing plenary. So I'm going to invite Jennifer to lead us in a commitment session. And I'm going to give her, she had asked for like 5 minutes. I'm going to give her 1 minute. Please go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating in this. And I know there's some deep thoughts going on, and some of you are actually questioning your whole career. It is okay. So, and that's a good step. Okay. So I work with children, and after every of our training to ensure that they have actually understood and they're going to do something about it, we always have a commitment. Okay? So in the commitment, you are going to write, not type, write, because I was told when you write, you remember. Okay? So you're going to write 3 points. What you're going to do: 1, to decolonize philanthropy in your organization as an individual. Don't go for your board members or your trustees. You, as an individual, how are you going to decolonize your organization? And number 2, how are you going to be more childist, okay, in your organization? Okay, so not many points, just 3. Okay, we might ask or we not ask. Those ones who are super brave, they can share, but you don't have to share. Okay, it's something for you to go work with, and then we'll come back to this on Friday to see what are some of the things that we can be able to work on. Okay, for the next 2 minutes, Brian.
30 seconds.
Okay, so just write 3 things. Oh, I've been told I give you homework. Yeah, I'm a teacher. So you can think about, please don't overthink. Don't think, oh God, my trustees, oh my board members, oh my CEO. No, please don't. If you think like that, it will never happen. Start from an individual. So if you see both the decolonizing and the childist framework, they all starts with an individual level. It all starts with one person. Okay? So because you start thinking about your structure, you're gonna go mad. Okay, so start you. What are you going to do about it? If you have the powers, you're the CEO, you are chair board, or you have some powers, you can probably commit on behalf of the organization. Awesome. But right now, we're going to do as an individual.
All right, and remember that is your homework. The essence of homework is to do it at home. All right.
No, not at home. We are going to look at it on Friday.
On Friday. Okay, awesome. We still do that. All right, as Jennifer has finished our session, I want us to conclude our session. So Jennifer, two words, conclude for us, and then we pass it over to Degan. 2 words. 2 words are like what? 2 seconds.
We have the power. The people in this room have the power to change the world. And to change the world, you have to start with our children. That means trusting children, trusting organizations that work directly with children, and giving them the funding. Okay? Don't let them struggle to serve children. Thank you.
Amen to that. Trust your children. Degan, why don't you give us your concluding words?
I think my conclusion or my call to action for all of you is, as Jennifer said, first reflect on the power that you have as individuals, whether you're both on the money side, on the funder side, but also on the activist side. I think this idea that we need money all the time to make change happen is not true. And it is the youth who make change happen. It is not us old people who make change happen. It has every single social movement that has been successful since the beginning of time has always started with youth. Always. And you need to understand the power that you wield. And don't wait for the donors to change. You make the change happen. So that's my call to action for you. For donors, I would say to you is actually put in some practical things that you can do. Say, okay, this year I'm going to put 1% of my funding into something radical, 2% of my funding into something radical, and just keep doing that every year. And believe me, if all of you do 1%, it adds up to a hell of a lot of money.
You don't need money to make change. I think that will be my biggest takeaway for this particular session. As we close this panel, I would love to tell all of you guys that you need to involve young people, okay? We have presented you guys with ideas, with stories, with innovations, with stories about the future, with frameworks even, okay? But it's as simple as starting. So yeah, something we forgot to say, in case you need to engage the YIP Fellow, in case you still need to know the how, please reach out to Zoe. Zoe will help, all right? I have been your moderator for this session. Thank you so much. My name is Brian King. See you guys in our own session next time. Bye-bye.